Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. I am your book reviewer, and today we're going to review the book Dr. Sleep that I downloaded on my Kindle by Stephen King. If you saw my video on The Shining that I had just done, Dr. Sleep is a sequel to that. What happened was throughout his career, since he had written The Shining back in 1977, Stephen King had gotten a lot of calls from, or a lot of questions from fans, and he's asked kind of himself, whatever happened to Danny Torrance from The Shining? Whatever happened to that kid? And throughout the characters in his book, in all of his books, he was one of those that he thought, whatever happened to him or something could have happened. Anyway, so he wrote this book. And the way that this book starts is it starts with Danny being, because when The Shining ends, Danny is 5. And then it goes to when Danny is 8 and living with his mother. And when Danny is 8 years old, he goes into his bathroom in the apartment that he and his mother are living in, and he sees the woman from 217 in his bathroom, and doesn't panic, just kind of shuts the door and tells his mother not to go in the bathroom. And he asks Wendy to get in touch with Dick Halloran, from the cook from The Shining. And so Dick lives nearby Wendy and Danny, and Dick and Danny have a conversation where he said, if these happen, think of like a lockbox in your mind, like a safe, and you can think of them and they will go into your lockbox and they will never come out again unless you want them to. So that happened with the woman in room 217 because he saw her again, and that kind of happened to a couple of other characters from The Shining who Danny thought was very scary. So and then it kind of jumps again, he's like 11 and things like that just kind of happening a little bit into his life. And then you get the adult Danny, and the adult Danny is not very good. He's not in a good shape. This is a Danny that maybe is in the 1980s or 1990s, I suppose. He, one of the first things that you notice is he has become an alcoholic, like his father. You would think that being the type of alcoholic that Jack Torrance was, that Danny would swear off that, but I don't know if it happens with generations, but you'd think like father, like son. But Danny wakes up in a strange apartment, and he realizes that he has taken a woman. He has picked up a woman at a bar. They had a lot of drinks, and he went home with her, and now he's woken up in her bedroom, and he looks, and he tries to get out of there, and he had like a bunch of money the night before, and he wonders what happened to it. Well, while going through this woman's apartment, he found a bunch of cocaine. So he kind of realizes that a lot of his money went to this cocaine purchase. And so what he does is he wonders if the woman still has some of this money, and her name is Deanie, which is important later, but he goes to her wallet and takes out like $70. And when he's about to pocket this money, he notices that Deanie has a son who is looking at him, and he's like a toddler. I think his name is Tommy. And Tommy kind of walks along to a coffee table where the cocaine is, and he was like, "Ooh, candy!" like thinking it's candy, and he's like, "No, that's not candy." And so but he feels bad because he didn't realize Deanie had a son. So he cleans up the cocaine to make sure that the kid doesn't touch it, and then puts the kid in bed with Deanie, and then leaves. And so then again, it kind of jumps a little further, and Danny is leaving the town where he met Deanie, which is Wilmington, North Carolina, and he's on a bus going north, and he happens to be in Fraser, New Hampshire, and it's a typical bus stop, and he sees Tony, his old imaginary friend, in one of the windows of the place in Fraser, and Tony tells him to get off here. And so Danny does, and it's very, and he's very perplexed because he hadn't seen Tony or talked to Tony in years, and because his shining ability it's still there, but it's decreased a lot. And Heath says that a lot of it is due to his drinking. When he's drunk or constantly drinking, his shining ability leaves. So, but he gets off in Fraser, and he's walking along, and he meets, one of the, town regular named Billy Freeman. And Billy has a job where he runs a train in Fraser, and the place where he runs it is called Teeny Town, and it's an attraction, a tourist attraction that people love, and you ride the train all around, and it sounded really fun. But Danny takes a job using that for a while, and then Danny gets involved in a local hospital because Danny has had past experiences working as like an orderly at hospitals. And so I'm going to leave Danny for 1 second, because if you've read enough Stephen King books, this book is one of those where he moves from different characters at a time, where you are you're first introduced to Danny, who you know from The Shining, but then you're introduced to somebody completely different and completely in another part of the country who, is not related to Danny at this time. And The Shining wasn't like that, because it just concentrated on 3 people living in a hotel, but many of Stephen King's books are like this, where in the beginning it's confusing, but it all works out in the end, which I'll explain. But the first time that you get where it jumps is you get to know this group that call themselves the True Knot. And you learn a little bit about them. They're a group of traveling, I guess gypsies is kind of what you would think about, or like nomads, because they move from place to place a lot. And they look kind of weird in their facial expressions and like physical beings. They look kind of weird, but they look human, but they're not. And one of the things that happens is that they prey on adults and children with this with a similar shining power to what Danny has. Because if you remember what Dick Halloran told Danny in The Shining, there are other people like him, which was very comforting to Danny, because he thought he was the only one. But what this True Knot does is it goes along the country finding people that have this shining power, and they use the power to their advantage. This group is kind of led by a woman called Rose the Hat. And the reason why she's called that is because she has a top hat that's like askew, so it could be like right here. Because all they say is it sits on a really angular level where you imagine it would fall off. But what this True Knot does with these people is that they kill them. They either kill them, or they turn them into themselves, into kind of True Knot people, which is not human. What they do when they kill them is that they take this power, like the shining power comes off of them as they're being tortured. This is not like a easy death. They're very tortured. And the worse they're tortured, the more this mist or thing comes off, which the True Knot calls steam. When they go from place to place, they're like, we've got to take steam. And this is what helps them be youthful. This is what helps them survive. Initially, when I had read this book, I was thinking of, if you remember the early 90s movie Hocus Pocus, when the witches go and suck the lives out of the children of Salem, Massachusetts. It reminded me of that because it made them youthful as well. But you'd think that they were maybe vampires, and you could think of them that way, but they're not like for blood. They're not for, they don't sleep in coffins. They can go out in the sun. These aren't like Bram Stoker vampires or Twilight vampires, so they're not really vampires at all. But, so there's that side of this book where you have the Dan Torrance character and then this True Knot kind of going simultaneously. And then you have a character named Abra Stone. And when she's first introduced, she's a baby. And she was born in, I would say, about 2001. Either 2000 or 2001. And one of the things that happened, one of the very first things that happens in this baby's childhood is that her parents have a dream on basically like September 9th or 10th of 2011, or 2001, excuse me, and both parents dream that their baby is crying, and when they get to their baby, they notice a number that's on her. One of the numbers is 77, and the other one is maybe 11 or something. And what it is it represents the planes of the two planes that go into the World Trade Center. I know one is 77. I'm sorry, I can't think of the other one. And so basically, Abra has now premonitioned about the September 11th attacks, but her parents don't know that until they hear it on the news and say, oh my gosh, that was really weird because I had this dream. So, and Abra grows up and it bounces year to year to year, from like 2000, 2001, goes to like 2004 or 5. And one of the things that happens is in Abra's birthday, I think it's her 4th birthday, there's a magician that comes and does magic and things like that. And then her parents and her great-grandmother, who she calls Momo, have been noticing other things about Abra throughout her childhood, and along with kind of the September 11th premonitions, just little things. And they tell Abra's pediatrician, whose name is John Dalton, about this, and they invite John to Abra's birthday party, and they're like, watch, or see if you notice anything. And one of the things that happens in Abra's birthday party is she causes spoons to go up in the air in their kitchen, where they just kind of stay there. And Abra's not there. She's doing this from outside because she's busy having fun watching the magicians. And they're like, this is really weird. And one of the things, also, the first connection that you get from moving from character to character in this book is when Abra is like 5 months old, she gets in contact with Danny, where Danny is now living in Fraser again, having a job at the hospice hospital, and he has a blackboard where he writes down the hospice patients, and he comes home and the blackboard is all cleared off except for, and there's one word written on it, and it's hello. And then the other word, another word that comes up pretty soon is Abra. And he's like, he'd never heard of this word, but he thinks it's a name. So he writes it down thinking, okay, this has got to be something. So, again, all three things are going on at the same time, going from year to year to year. Abra is growing up and more things are happening. Dan is kind of growing older, and more things are happening with the hospice, which I'll get to in a second. And then the True Knot is moving from place to place and killing more and more kids and adults, which I'll get to also in a second. One of the special things about Danny is he uses his shining ability, or his special ability, in kind of a good advantage in this hospice hospital. The nurses and other orderlies in this hospital nickname him Dr. Sleep, even though he's not a doctor by any means, and that's where this book comes, or the title of the book comes in. But what's been happening is that the hospital has kind of a resident cat that kind of goes in and out through the patients' rooms, and the patients all know her or him. I believe his name is Azriel, or he's called Azzy, which is, to me, very, very funny, because if you're familiar with the Smurfs cartoon, Gargamel's cat was named Azriel. So, again, that's kind of what popped in my head when reading this book, so I thought that was kind of funny as a connection. But anyway, the orderly, or the nurse on duty, will call Dan at his house and say, so-and-so is ready to go, name, so-and-so is ready to go, Azzy's been in his room. And the nurses and orderlies have realized, or kind of figured out, that every time this cat, Azriel's been in a patient's rooms, they're gonna die soon. And so what Dan does is he goes into the room and he takes the patient's hands and he makes their death easy. He puts like good memories into their heads by reading their minds and putting it back into their minds, where like it'll be good childhood memories, maybe like first loves, memories of their children growing up, just really happy, no scary memories, just really happy memories. And Dan's like, okay, now you're gonna go to sleep for a while, and that's when they die. So again, I kind of liked that, because it was like, okay, because death is obviously very scary for a lot of people, and he makes it easier for them. So so that goes on, and and so Abra is also connected to the True Knot, because Rose, the leader of the True Knot, realizes that there is somebody very close who is a big steamhead, as they call, because she takes, since Abra has the shining power, she knows, or Rose can sense a shining power when it has kids. And one of the kids that happens is a boy named Bradley Trevor, and his death is very gruesome, and it's not exactly like portrayed very well or very much in the book, but it was probably one of the scariest scenes in this book for me. And Abra doesn't see the death exactly, but she knows that it happens. And one of the she refers to Bradley as the baseball boy, because Bradley loved baseball, and he was killed he was killed while wearing his baseball glove. And one of the members of the True Knot put Bradley's baseball glove on, and that's how Abra is able to know who this True Knot is and what they're doing and who they really are. And so Abra gets in touch with Dan again through through like shining powers, and she's like, these people have to be stopped, and they're after me. So, so then kind of the rest of the book ensues where Billy, or Dan entrusts Billy, who has the shining power himself, a little bit, not very much. Abra's pediatrician, John Dalton, who Dan knows through AA, because Dan has been going to AA, and Abra are trying to get this true knot. So that's kind of where the book, it's not where the book ends, but there's a lot that goes on, and this book is fairly new, so I won't spoil it for you. So that'll be the end of my review. So again, it was a very good book. I'm not scared a lot by Stephen King. When I read Stephen King books, I'm not really scared, unfortunately, but this book scared me. And I was really happy about that, and I was really surprised that it did. So, the next book that I'm going to read is also a Stephen King book. Sorry I'm doing so much, but it's going to be Carrie. Mostly because the new movie remake of this is coming out, so I'm interested to know what they're going to retake with this movie. So anyway, that's it, and I bid you all farewell, and happy reading.